What's up, everybody? Callie Umwer here from insaga.com. I'm here with Premier hopeful candidate Crombie. How you doing?
Hey, I'm really great. We've done these so many times before when I was mayor of the city of Mississauga. So it feels like home.
Yeah, different setting. Well, actually, same setting, different kind of venue. But so 28 days later, okay, the polls right now. If the election was today, you would not be premier. In 28 days, what do you hope to accomplish to, get the votes in so you become premier?
So campaigns matter. I need to get our message to Ontarians that Doug Ford has the wrong priorities. He doesn't care about you. He's called a snap election in the middle of winter to save his own job rather than worry about your job and the incoming tariff threat. At a cost of $189 million, that money could have put in your healthcare or our education anywhere but in a snap election. He's clearly trying to run away from an RCMP investigation and cling to power himself. So I hope to spread the message about our policies and how they're more about the basics for people, getting them health care, because Doug Ford said he'd end hallway health care. He didn't get it done. Doug Ford said he'd cut your taxes. He didn't get it done, but I will. He said he'd build homes. He didn't get that done either, but I will. So our program will bring back more affordability, because I like to ask people, is your life more affordable today than it was before Doug Ford? The answer is absolutely not. So we have measures in place to bring back affordability, bring everyone a family doctor, build housing that's affordable. And I hope to share that vision with Ontarians.
Awesome. Let's talk about trade and tariffs. Obviously, we're talking about tariffs, and Donald Trump's all over the news right now. Has Premier Ford done enough in regards to pushing back against tariffs? And if not, what would you have done differently?
Good question. Let me first say that this election isn't about tariffs. This is a distraction at the height of a crisis when he needs to be at his job working, protecting us, protecting jobs, but he's only interested in protecting his own job. Let me say that all the opposition parties said that we would support a stimulus package. So he has our support. He has a majority government, so he doesn't need an election, because we're going to have one in June 2026 when we should, and he's used this as an excuse, the tariff threat as an excuse to call an early election. But I tell you, I'm a different kind of leader. People in Mississauga will remember that I diversified our economy. We're based on 4 strong pillars. It kind of insulates us. And I brought investment into Mississauga, much like Hazel McCallion did, to create jobs and to create prosperity. And that's what I think he has failed at the most. He has the wrong priorities, and I'll get to that later, but he hasn't insulated the economy. He's put all of his eggs in the EV basket. So, of course, we've spent tens of billions of dollars in one industry to protect our automotive jobs. And by the way, those are really important. They work really hard, and their jobs are at threat with this tariff threat. But he hasn't done enough to protect those industries and create more jobs and diversify our economy, as we have here in Mississauga with advanced manufacturing, life sciences, the biopharma, biotech industries. We have very strong financial industry as well. And then IT. We are a very strong economy here because we're diversified. He's failed to do that.
Now, let's talk about Ontario's economy. Let's just say on Monday, Trump imposes these tariffs. And even if he doesn't, right, what are you going to do to strengthen Ontario's economy as a whole over the next 4 years?
So we can talk about that tariff threat. Now it's off the table. So was this election even necessary? A snap election in the dead of winter at $189 million. To wonder what Doug Ford's really running away from. And I think it's the RCMP investigation. But what would we do better to insulate? What would we do if to protect from the tariff threat? Was that the question?
Yes. No, the question is, over the next 4 years, whether or not these tariffs are come in, right? What will you do to strengthen Ontario's economy?
Yeah. So we have to look at different sectors, the manufacturing sector for a moment. Let's talk about that. Our economy is crumbling. He paints a rosy picture, but our unemployment rate is higher than it's been in over a decade. Jobs are actually leaving the province. We've seen 21,000 manufacturing jobs leave the province. We've seen 36,000 construction jobs leave the province because, believe it or not, BC, Alberta, and Quebec have figured out how to build housing. Doug Ford has not. And we're actually a drag on the national home building numbers. Like BC, they're building 70% more homes than we are. Alberta and Quebec, 32%, 26% more homes. We are failing. The economy is failing. We have the highest debt and the highest deficit on record. People talked about a former Liberal premier. This is far worse, far, far worse. So he needs to focus on the job at hand. We need investment into our economy to stimulate growth, right? But we need to diversify our economy. Look, I'm all about protecting automotive jobs and our OEMs, and that part is strong. And I worry about that investment, quite frankly, because there's a threat of tariffs. And one of the advisors to the president, may or as a result of it, we might see a change of policy on EVs, and because of his where the companies he owns. So I'd be very concerned about that. The economy isn't well insulated enough. You and I well know that we could have gone to Japan or Germany to brought in more manufacturing jobs, to bring that investment into Ontario, biotech, biopharma, those life sciences jobs, that helps insulate us. The tech jobs, that helps insulate us too. But he's singularly focused in one small sector of the automotive industry and the EV batteries. And that I think, by the way, our economy is not prepared. We haven't done what we need to green our economy, provide the incentives we need. In fact, we don't even have charging stations in place or a plan for them, what we're going to do with those EV batteries later. There's no plan. This is my problem with Doug Ford. He makes announcements. They sound great. Number one, they don't happen. And number two, there's never a plan. He always seems reactive.
So let's talk transit. Okay, I think Merritt Stiles, NDP, said that she would, the 407 would be free for everybody. I think Doug Ford said something similar to that, and he's going to build a tunnel underneath the 401. What's your plan to get people moving in the GTA?
Well, let's just say that none of that is realistic. And the other opposition leader isn't a serious leader, and that plan is not very serious either. So, of course, we want to invest in public transit. The problem with the Premier's plan, he's got so many projects that have been announced, and none of them are completed, and none of them are fully funded. Again, when I look at Eglinton Crosstown, #failure. When will that ever open? My goodness, the promises made on our GO train lines. Like now they're looking at the Milton GO line again. We've only been asking for that for 30 years. He's made those promises before. What about the London GO, the all-day Niagara GO, electrifying our lines? The Ontario line, what's the status of that? And now in the 413, a highway that we don't need, by the way, because there are other options for that. And now he's talking about a tunnel under the 401. This is just silliness, quite frankly. It's not a realistic plan, and it would bankrupt the province at a cost of $200 billion. And of course, it wouldn't alleviate any traffic congestion for 40 years, 40 years. So they're not realistic plans.
What's your plan?
Our plan is to build more public transit and to have it properly funded. I want to get people out of their cars and into public transit. And that is enhancing with the plans that are on track today. I mean, it was great that the Premier was in Brampton recently to announce the funding for the Brampton share of the LRT. Great. On the eve of an election, where's he been? Where's that money been? Where's the loop for the Mississauga LRT, rather, the Hazel McCallion line, the LRT? We're so proud of that. But he took away the loop, and it's so necessary for the downtown, which is the growth, and the downtown has exploded, and people need access to public transit. So, I would talk to as you know, I have a great relationship with all the mayors because I was the chair of the Big City Mayors Organization, and invest in their public transit systems. We may have to take some of that off their books and onto the provinces, quite frankly, because we need to spur investment, kind of a post-wartime effort. We're so 35 years, 40 years behind on investing in public transit in the urban areas. And frankly, over at Roma, the Roma Conference, which is the Rural Ontario Municipals Association, they came to me too with their public transit plans, their bus routes, their plans, and they need better coordination. And frankly, they need an investment, stimulus investment for their plans.
So more subways, more trains, more LRTs. Is that the plan?
Absolutely. More investment in public transit to get people, like, this is greening our economy too, get people out of their cars. It's faster and into public transit.
Okay. Let's talk about Metrolinx delays. Metrolinx has been a disaster, to say the least. Eglinton Crosstown, Hazel McCallion line, they're all delayed. I mean, Eglinton Crosstown has been delayed years now. If you were premier, how are you going to fix this mess?
Well, it's tone at the top, Khaled. It's leadership. It's keeping people accountable and getting updates. It's not enough that the former CEO Phil Verster, and by the way, I think this probably cost him his job, but not soon enough. When he couldn't deliver on a date that line was going to open. Let's hold people accountable. The premier says he's a business person. I was a business person. I would hold these people accountable. If they're not delivering, as the president of the United States says, you're fired. We have to take action and hold people accountable. So Metrolinx, too little, too late. Like, what's the status of all these lines and all these plans and all this investment? When's it happening? When are the doors opening? People want to know. I want to know.
Let's talk about healthcare, and I'm going to throw a little Brampton in here. You've talked a lot about healthcare over the last, I think since your campaign started. But let's talk Brampton. Do you think there should be a second full hospital in Brampton? And if you became premier, would that happen right away?
Let me just say how much I love Brampton. It's such a beautiful and growing city. In fact, if you look at the latest statistics, the census numbers, Brampton's population is higher than Mississauga's. And here in Mississauga, we have the newest state-of-the-art hospital being planned, 22 stories, 3 million square feet, an additional 950 beds to serve really the Western GTA, as well as Mississauga and Brampton. But the Brampton Hospital was built too small to begin with. The William Osler, it should have been bigger. And now you've got Brampton Civic. There have been some commitments made. Yes, they need a full hospital, and they needed it yesterday. And now Brampton is growing even faster than some of the other communities in the surrounding area, including Mississauga. Of course, they needed that funding. But again, my issue is delivering the funding on the eve of an election. I am a little bit skeptical about that. That should have, if the premier was committed, if the premier was serious about that pledge, it would have happened before today.
Let's talk about homeless and encampments. Obviously, massive problem, especially in Southern Ontario and the GTA. What's your plan to address this?
Well, let me say how serious the encampment issue is. And let me also say how I've been personally affected, people in my family with addiction issues. And I know how people suffer. And I know that we need a strategy and some funding behind it so people who want treatment have access to it. Because first of all, it's not available when they need it. And if you go private clinics, it's too expensive for people. So yes, we need an end to the encampments, but let's be realistic. These are our children, people's children, and they needed to be dealt with some dignity as well. We need a plan. It's one thing to say remove them and put them where, I ask you, Khaled, because you're moving the problem to somewhere else. I don't know this mass, pickup of homeless people, what the plan is, where they will be held, will they receive treatment and the wraparound services that they need. What they need is supportive housing with the wraparound services so they can get the care and the treatment that they need. Let's be compassionate. Let's solve this problem properly. Let's look at basic incomes. We have to look at that. We have to look at it and study the results. That program was piloted and it was canceled. I'd like to see that. We need to build housing that's more than affordable, but it has the wraparound supports that are needed for these people to overcome their addiction issues. It's not enough just to pick people up off the street. You had to have a plan, and it has to be well funded. Because as a former mayor, let me say that this has been downloaded onto the cities and the smaller towns. Even small towns are suffering with encampment issues, with people with mental health, addiction, homelessness issues. There's no funding for it. And that's why there are a lot of cities and municipalities seeing a huge rise in their property taxes. This has been put on the property tax base because there's been no strategy and no funding from the province. Lately, they've introduced something called those heart homes for recovery, but they're a drop in the bucket and they're years too late and they won't open for years. So there has been no, the plan has been reactive, not proactive, and there's no solution for years to come. When you make these announcements, there has to be proper funding. And by the way, these problems can't get pushed onto the property taxpayer.
You are running in my old neighborhood of Cooksville. What made you decide to run in Cooksville?
T.L. Kennedy, I know you went to high school there. What an incredible place.
Don't say that too loud.
You know what? I'm just so happy to have my name on a ballot in Mississauga again. It didn't really matter, but we had some great candidates lined up in the other ridings. So we chose Mississauga East Cooksville. And listen, I've been a part of their community for, 15 years that I'm an elected official. I've raised my kids in Mississauga. I'm familiar with all the community events and community groups there. I've attended so many of their events. I'm just so excited to be on the ballot, and I could have run anywhere, but I'm really glad that I'm going to be in Mississauga East Cooksville. And that raises an important question. Doug Ford slapped a hat on, said Canada's not for sale. No, but the Greenbelt is, isn't it? $8 billion scandal that he's being investigated for by the RCMP. And that former member who was part of that scandal, who, part of the Las Vegas massage with the developer, whatever that happened, was in that riding. So the people of Mississauga East Cooksville need someone who will care for them and their needs and understands the community and will have integrity.